Our next speaker is a gentleman that I met, my fellow Iranian, that is part of the Commissioner of San Francisco Immigrant Rights, Nima Rahimi. Nima, he worked on the travel ban against Muslims. He's worked against ICE detention centers, protecting DACA. So he's done some amazing work, and I wanted to get his perspective. So please, Nima.
Thank you, John. Let me start by, Hassan, thank you for all your work you're doing on behalf of the Yemeni people and the Yemeni diaspora. We have many Yemeni immigrants in San Francisco who I've had the fortune of meeting through my work as an immigrant rights commissioner. One issue that came out of the Civil War were, folks were trying to send money home to help their families buy food, buy medicine. I mean, as little as $50 a month, $100 a month could support multiple families, but they weren't able to get their money across because of the banking system. They would have to use Western Union or other payment systems, and they would hold their money without explanation due to onerous regulations that were promoted by the Trump administration, and people were suffering and dying. And I'm hopeful that this administration will move swiftly to right the wrongs of that war. Again, with these kinds of situations, it's the people that suffer because the politicians want to test their weapons or to project power for reasons that sometimes don't make any sense to me. So Hassan, thank you for your work. So just to give you a quick little background of myself, I was born in Berkeley, California, actually, to Iranian American parents. They came here to the United States in the 70s. To go to school. And, back then with the Shah, there were a lot of cross-cultural programs. A lot of Iranians would come to the United States, get an education, higher education. They would go back to Iran to improve their stock in life, get a good job. My parents, they grew up in poor villages in Iran, and big families, and they hustled. They worked hard, and they got themselves into programs in the United States. And they were going to go back. They were going to go back and get good jobs and help their families out of poverty. That was the plan. But unfortunately, you plan and God laughs, right? The revolution happened, and then the Iraq War started. And they instead of going back home, they had to pivot and figure out how to make a life here in America, and use their few quarters that they had. Split between their meals, their education costs, and their laundry to be able to call home and get a few minutes. They would have to call like a neighbor who had a telephone, and not everybody had a telephone back then. And they'd get news of the latest bombing, how their family was doing, who was alive, who was not. So I can't imagine going through that. I feel so lucky and privileged to be born in the Bay Area. And to be able to do the work that I do because of their sacrifices. And then that's kind of, I went through a little identity process when I was in high school, because I was a sophomore in high school when 9/11 happened. And I didn't really understand what was going on. The distinction between Saudi Arabia, other Arab countries, Iran, why people were calling me a terrorist. I didn't understand. So when I got to college, I went to Cal. I went to Berkeley across the bay to go to undergrad. I went through this entire, I focused all of my studies on understanding my identity. Who am I? Am I Iranian? Am I American? What does that mean? And ultimately, I did a lot of reading and studying on the history of the Middle East, how it became what it is today, why the conflicts are what they are today. I went and got a master's degree in global politics so I could understand the history, the international relations of the Middle East, and why these conflicts have persisted for so many decades, and what the root of that was. And ultimately, again, the people get screwed over for people who want power. That's what it all comes down to. And I mean, of course, it's a simplification of the complex and nuances of the history, but that's what it came back to. So when I went to law school, took on a bunch of debt that I'll have to pay off for the next 25 years, and became a lawyer. And so my day job keeps me busy. I can't do the humanitarian work that I'd love to do as a day job. But what I do on in my spare time is I'm on the Immigrant Rights Commission here in San Francisco. I'm a delegate to the state Democratic Party, and I've been advocating against war and on behalf of human rights to the extent that I can. And that's why I had great hope when Obama became president, and he actually pursued detente and engagement with Iran. As Vahid mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, the Iranian regime isn't, they're not the beacon of peace. They're not the beacon of human rights. But at the end of the day, international relations isn't always about that. It's about finding a path that you can reach an ultimate amount of peace at some point in the future. And I thought Obama's engagement was historic, despite the odds. And it gave me hope that with an educated, strong middle class in Iran, very smart, very educated, a lot of potential in the country, engagement and integration with the world economy would result over time to democracy. I mean, you can call me an idealist, you can call me naive, but I think historically engagement with the outside world, economic interdependence, often results in the end of authoritarianism. Not always, but often. And I think Iran is a prime country where if you engage and you integrate the country with the Western world, you'll find that the people will push for that freedom because they've tasted a bit of it before. And so I had a lot of hope. And so when Donald Trump got elected, and he started to actually follow through on all the crap that he said during the election, it was devastating. But we you can't just sit there and take it, right? So we were at the airports the day after the announcement came of the travel ban. We gathered organizations, community organizations, Iranian American organizations, lawyers, activists. We went to the airport to shut the airport down. We helped folks that were arriving. I mean, we literally put a Google Doc together that we sent around in social media to families so they could tell us who their relatives were that were arriving at the airport. So we can literally text them as they landed and let them know you have a lawyer on the other side. Don't sign anything that's going to give away your rights. We had no idea what was going on. We were literally improvising. Trump set us back. And I'm looking at the situation right now with the nuclear deal. And, I think there's a lot going on in the background that we just don't know about, right? As there always is. The leaders are posturing. The Iranians have an election coming up soon that could change the balance of power in the politics domestically. You have a very old supreme leader. There could be a transition of power in the middle of all this. When Soleimani got assassinated last year, I wrote an article in the Chronicle actually about it because I was afraid. I was like, look, that was a red line crossed, right? Like in their politics behind the scenes in their proxy battles, the U.S. and Iran have had certain red lines they don't cross. I thought that one was a red line. And I think articles that were written about the assassination after the fact also indicated that was a red line. And, Iran's retaliation was a bit soft, right? They had to do something. They did something. It wasn't really that much, and it caused a lot of fanfare. But I don't see the hardliners in that country letting that one go. I do worry, and I wrote about this, that they're going to retaliate in some way that's going to be significant, at least for them. And what are the consequences of that going to be? And what is that going to look like? It could happen years from now. It could happen, on foreign soil. I don't know. But the Trump administration set us back. It wasn't just getting out of the JCPOA, the sanctions, the way they've isolated the country even further during a pandemic, the suffering that people have felt. There's a lot of loss of trust, right? And so how do you repair that? How does Biden do that? And I view this from an American lens. So that identity process that I was telling you about, at the end of the day, I said, no, I'm Iranian American. America is a melting pot. America stands for values. It's not about your nationality. It's not about where your parents came from. It's the value system that this country stands for and that we all, as citizens, will embody, hopefully. It's not always like that, though, right? And you look at our history, it's not always like that. But we got to keep fighting the good fight because, the arc of history bends towards justice, hopefully, right? And I believe that. I feel like over time we're getting there. And it takes people like us moving that needle towards that arc. So I'm up on time here, but look, I think Biden's a good guy. I think he's going to be one of the most impactful presidents in U.S. history, particularly because he's a white male and he'll be able to have a lot more, he'll be able to accomplish more than maybe his predecessors did. But I think ultimately, I think he's going to be a very impactful president. I think there will be a deal with Iran, and I do think that Iran will be a democracy one day. And the relationship between the two countries will be positive again. That is my hope, and it's my belief. But I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's going to take some time.
I hope it happens, Nima. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for all the great work that you do on behalf of immigrants, on behalf of people that are coming to this country as refugees from abroad, and as well as the work that you did around the Muslim ban and DACA and abolishing ICE. And there's a lot more there to talk about in future events. So thank you so much.